Hey there, this is Adam Sullivan, Creative Director at Kanary Solutions. In this video today, we are going to talk about flattened files and why you need to stay away from them when delivering jobs to print. At some point, you or somebody on your team may have delivered a file to a print vendor for perhaps a piece of packaging and been told that we can't deal with these flattened files, quote unquote. Can you please send us a layered Adobe Illustrator file? And you probably got confused and said, flattened files, Adobe Illustrator, I'm really confused. What does this all mean? Well, it's easier for me to show you than tell you, as always. So let's dive in and take a look. Now, if you look at my screen, you will see that on my file list, I have a file for an Adobe Illustrator version of a box for a brand called Rivian. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you've seen that we broke down what is lovely about Adobe Illustrator when you are a print vendor and the fact that everything is on these layers so that you don't accidentally print things that shouldn't print, like the cut lines and the fold lines, or you don't accidentally use the wrong color because the color is on its own layer and things like that. So I won't get into it too much other than to say that layers are good because they allow the print vendor to print the things that they do want to print and don't print the things that they don't want to print. Okay, let's look at the wrong way to do it. Now, a lot of times in my line of work, I will get files delivered to me from clients that are already gone past Adobe Illustrator and into the PDF phase. And we've all looked at PDFs. We know what they look like on screen. Let's open one up now for the exact same box, and they look great. They're really clean. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that usually if you're delivering a printer a PDF, that was probably meant to either go to you as the client as a proof, just so you could see what that package is going to look like, or maybe it actually came from the printer after the fact. Maybe you used to work with a different factory and you're switching over to a new factory. Maybe you're coming to Kanary Solutions and we're finding a new vendor for you to print that package. And you asked the factory for the print file and they said, well, you're leaving us, so here's a PDF instead, and you won't figure it out. So let's take a look at what happens when you open up a PDF in Adobe Illustrator. Right away, we have a little bit of an alert. To preserve appearance, some text has been outlined. I'll show you what that means. Here's that file. And once again, it looks really cool. It looks great. But one thing that you'll notice right away is that if you go over here to our layers palette, which I showed you briefly in the Adobe Illustrator file, you can see that there are no individual layers for certain parts of this job that print. It just all happens in one layer. So right away, one big problem is that we need to be able to make sure that these pink lines, which means this is where the box cuts, and these blue lines, which means this is where the box folds, aren't there because you don't want to actually see those on the final printed piece, right? Those are just for the printer to understand where that stuff goes. Once something is made into a PDF, let me switch to outline view here, it becomes this strange situation where for the PDF to do what it does, it needs to basically kind of create all these weird little containers inside of containers, graphically speaking. It's kind of like one of those weird nesting Russian egg dolls where everything is kind of nested inside other boxes, and it's really hard to pull apart. I can do it. I have to do it all the time, and I'm good at it, but it takes a long time, and it can really impact your print deadlines if you need to get something to market. So if I go to this little arrow and I click on something in this file, I'm met with a lot of these boxes that kind of stop me in my tracks. And if we look at this in preview mode one more time, you'll see that there's this one big box that surrounds everything, and I have to delete that. And then how do I get rid of those pink and blue lines that I was talking about so that those don't print? Well, they're broken up now by the PDF into a billion tiny little pieces that are sitting on top of everything else. And then it's really easy to kind of click on something that you don't want to delete and accidentally get rid of that instead. So I have to do crazy things like click on this and then go select same stroke color. And then it selects all those pink things and I hit delete and blah, blah, blah. I have to do the same thing for the blue and go select same stroke color and delete that. It's very time intensive. And then that has to go all the way down until I have all of the black typography on one layer, all of the blue flood coat that's in this Pantone color onto its own layer, so on and so forth. Now, this is actually, because I made this PDF myself as an example, this is actually one of the better ones. Sometimes I get them where the boxes inside boxes thing is just crazy. There's a million of them, and it can take me a couple of hours just to kind of break down one PDF and make it back into a file that prints. And then I'll show you one more thing that also happens. This was the alert that came up when we first opened the file. Some of this type is still actual typography so that you can change it and make it whatever you want. But other pieces of type have been turned to these little collections of lines and circles so that if you need to modify the copy before it goes to the printer, then you're kind of SOL and you need to start all over again and manually type things in, figure out what the font was. If you don't know what the font was, it gets messy. Also, all of this type is now on individual lines. You can see, look at that, it's all over the place. This is not even real type anymore, but this is. So you would need to completely reflow and reprint all of this text from scratch. It can get really messy, and both from the editing side, if you need to change things about your label in the future, which often ingredients lists change, you have to kind of like start from scratch on all that. And as I've also shown, the printer is just not going to love you when they have to pull all those pieces apart and put them back together again. So it's doable, but it takes a long time to kind of fix things and get things right. So it's really better if you can get to your original designer who created this file in Adobe Illustrator and get them to deliver those assets to you the way that they started out. So I hope that helps. It'll definitely get your job to print faster and get you to market faster.